For 18th, 2023 into order and have roll call. Yep. Bob and Carol said they wouldn't be here and Stacy's not here, so. And Gary and Bob are online. Okay, so we got 26, present and 3 absent. Okay. Public notification.
Wendy Coleman, my executive assistant, has complied with Wisconsin open meeting requirements. Meeting agendas have been posted on electronic meeting notice boards located on the first and second floor of the Government Center and on the first floor of the Justice Center. Hard copy of the meeting agenda has been posted in the county clerk's office, and she's verified the proper posting of this meeting. This is the Barron County Board of Supervisors meeting for December 18th, 2023, and the agenda and all documents were posted on the 13th at 10:58 a.m.
Okay, the invocation will be by our own Dana Heller.
Thank you, Lord, for the opportunity to come together as a group. We ask, bless each and every one of our travels. Thank you for bringing your one and only begotten. And we ask that you bless. Very happy. Bless the meetings, every one of the families, all the people.
Amen. Thanks, Dana. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I believe we have some special matters.
Yep, I do have some special matters. Number one, I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and thanks for coming in December. I have no agenda items at this time for the January 15th, 2024 County Board meeting. That is scheduled for 9 a.m. on the 15th, but at this time I have no agenda items. If we do have a meeting, please be very aware that that is the employee training day, so you're going to see a lot of employees in blue jeans and sweatshirts hauling out stuff and going in and out of trainings. And that's the two things I have, other than Jess, I believe you wanted to say a few things.
All right, just a reminder, you can turn in your signatures if you've received enough, minimum of 20, you can turn those in anytime. They are due on January 2nd by 5 p.m. That's Tuesday. And then if you are going to be filing non-candidacy, that is due this Friday, December 22nd by 5 p.m. And then if you want, some of you mentioned you had signatures to file today, you can do that after the meeting upstairs. We just have to get you a receipt.
Okay, is that it? Okay, item number 4, approve the agenda. Motion by Supervisor Cook, seconded by Supervisor Patty Anderson. Any concerns with the agenda? Not, let's vote.
Waiting on Jerry and Bill. Okay.
Okay, 26 yes and 3 absent, so that motion's, agenda is approved. Item number 5, approve the minutes of November 6, 2023. Motion by Supervisor Nelson, seconded by Supervisor Mosentine. Does anybody have any concerns with the minutes? Seeing none, let's vote. That passed 26 yes and 3 absent, so the minutes are approved. Public comment, we did not have any.
Mr. Chairman, would you like to introduce our two new employees who've been promoted at the Sheriff's Department, or do you want me to do it?
Why don't
Okay.
you do it?
We have Jason Hagan, who will be replacing Jason Liu, who's retiring. He will be our chief deputy, and Officer Hodek is going to be our patrol captain. So congratulations, you guys. Thanks for joining us.
Welcome, guys, and congratulations. So, okay, item number 7, Tom Landgraf will speak to us about our Barron County Housing Authority project with the low-income tax credits. So, welcome, Tom.
It's a good thing you're here. Well, I wouldn't say that. Well, thanks for giving us the opportunity to give you just a brief update. Quite a few things have happened since I was here last, but before I get into my slides, I took the opportunity to walk through with a number of you to look at your meals facility. That's very impressive. I've been in quite a few of them, and I haven't seen anything like that. So you should be extremely proud. And to be able to generate the meals for the entire county in one place is, that, like I said, that's impressive. So as you recall, the Housing Authority process is to renovate all 70 of its current HUD-supported housing. Those are located in 6 different communities in the county and 7 different locations, a total of 70 units. Vast majority of folks are older adults, but there's also some younger folks with disabilities. So it's a population that probably will be, if not already, taking advantage of your meal site. What we've done since we talked last was to take a step back and look at the condition of all of the properties and bring in some third-party folks who have the ability to walk through a building and look kind of inside the walls to see what's all there. We ended up with a project budget of about $17 million for the redevelopment, and we're in the process of moving through. Let's see, do I need to tell people to advance the slide? So, why don't you go to the second slide? Okay. So that's the first bullet point. I just put the list of the folks and the organizations that were involved in getting us to this point. Lots of third-party folks. Most of them occurred pretty much without a glitch, except the fourth one down, the rent study. That's required by HUD. And we followed the same process that MEG has used in the past. HUD originally had the mortgage on the buildings back when they were built in the late 70s. And the passage of time, things have changed. So HUD required a number of fairly significant modifications to several of the sites. Probably took about 6 to 7 months for MEG to get that through the HUD process. So that's one of the things that didn't happen quite the way we thought it would. Once you get to the next slide. But that's behind us, and we're moving forward. We've submitted an initial and then a revised application to WIDA for tax credits. That's about $5.7 million. Also a request for some long-term financing of about $4 million, and then also some gap financing. So in total, about just shy of $10 million of the 17 is coming from WIDA or potentially WIDA-like type financing. We applied for some home financing and received that. That's roughly $500,000. Federal Home Loan Bank of Chicago grant was applied for. That's received and approved. That's $900,000. The ARPA funds that you all were on top of early on in the process are certainly a major part of the of the transaction, and the tax credit equity investor, National Equity Fund, is given us the preliminary letter of intent, and we'll be working with them to finalize things as the final application goes through the process with HUD. One of the things that we had hoped would have been in a not an in-process item is the last 4 items on the list. When we first started this process, none of the federal COVID relief and stimulus bills had gone through Congress. Now there are 4 of them. All of them have funding suitable for use in this redevelopment. And when you add it up, probably about 30% of the total cost that I mentioned to you earlier could be covered by one or a number of those grant funds. So as the saying goes, those 4 items are kind of the tail wagging the dog. We would hate to not pursue a grant versus looking at borrowed funds. And we would also not want to pass up the opportunity to do some things that wouldn't be affordable in a typical sense. A lot of it is energy related and improvements in efficiency of the building and the ability to also reduce the utility bills of the residents. And as I mentioned, the residents are predominantly older adults on fixed income. So as utility rates go up faster than Social Security or their pension might go up, they end up with a little bit less. And one of the goals is to try to use some of that renewable energy funding to reduce those utility bills and give the residents a fighting chance to kind of keep up with increases. The good news is Congress approved the money. The bad news is the agencies promised that they would get the rules and regulations out soon. The last one, which is the biggest one from the EPA, has a $6.7 billion earmark in just for organizations like the Barron County Housing Authority. They were supposed to have that in July, then September, then December, and now they're telling us that we'll probably see the results of that in early March. So unfortunately, some things we have to just wait until the opportunity is there to see what the rules look like and figure out if we can take advantage of some of those opportunities to enhance the process. However, we're not just sitting waiting for the last piece of federal information. So if you go to the next slide, we're moving ahead, assuming that with the passage of time, the rules and regulations that we were anticipating would be out by now will in fact be out early part of next year. So in January and February, a lot of the cost elements of the transaction are going to get finalized. The project's out for bid right now. And looking at financing and materials supply and labor and other things will be the subject of January and February's activity. March and April, we'll start working on legal documents, and hopefully by that time, we'll start to see some of the results of the grant and loan funds from the federal stimulus money that we talked about on the previous slide. My last bullet is probably the biggest one. As I mentioned before, about 30% of the project cost could be funded with some of those federal funds that are just starting to get into the pipeline. So that's one of the big unknowns. What exactly we will be able to deal with. A lot of folks across the country have been waiting. So to use a term we can all understand, it's going to be a food fight. in every state, in every county, and every community to figure out who's got a project that meets the criteria that will be in those federal rules and regulations. The other thing, which I know you are tracking, is certainly interest rates. When we started this process, they were not at 7%. Materials costs were not where they are now, and labor wasn't where it is. None of those have moved in the right direction in the last 18 months. So one of the biggest issues is interest rates, and as you know, the Federal Reserve opted to not increase interest rates for the third time that they could have, and they also talked about a structure if there would be rate decreases in 2024 when people could see them. And of course, if you check the value of your 401k, it went up significantly. As a result of that news, the stock market reacted very favorably. So what we don't want to do is also lock into interest rates at the top of the curve and then watch them come down. So we're working with Jeff and with the Housing Authority Board to look at that last bullet. There are some alternatives that may give Barron County Housing Authority an opportunity to take advantage of some things that will be moving nationally and maybe make them move a little faster by being able to execute some of the stuff at the county level instead of having to wait for it at the state level. So lots of information, lots of moving parts, but things are starting to come into focus pretty quickly, and I'm sure things will be moving along with construction starting certainly late spring and into early summer.
Supervisor Cook, you had a question?
A couple of them. Thank you, Tom. So this remodel, where are the people who are living in these units? Are they going to live in the unit while it's being remodeled?
No. The nature of the redevelopment, especially if some of that energy funding kicks in, will require the resident to be out of their unit. There's 3 different paths that the Housing Authority is looking at. They have some units that are typically vacant, so they would keep them vacant. We have money in the budget to temporarily relocate residents, either in a vacant unit in a different building, or as has frequently been the case with older adults, the ability to potentially move in with family or friends for a short period of time. None of the buildings are likely to be completely empty, but probably in some of the 8-unit buildings, half of the building might be emptied out. So there's too much risk of having the residents in place when the rehab is occurring.
Right. And the other question I have, I mean, 17 million, if you divide that by 70, we're looking at about 240,000 per unit to remodel.
It's not all hard cost. There's a lot of interest and fees and some soft costs in there as well. Probably 70% of it is hard cost, and a good deal of that is the cost increases that we've seen. And you've probably seen as if you've been to the hardware store or the lumberyard over the last 18 months.
Well, when it comes to like energy efficiency, which I hope we achieve
Right.
for everyone, including the utilities and the people who use utilities, but it almost seems if you're looking at 1 and 2 unit housing, you could almost start from scratch. Maybe not?
No. We can, that's a typical question, and I'm sorry to give you the quick, short answer. I've got more schedules than you probably have time to look at, but the cost of building right now, if we looked at just a bare bones number that WIDA looks at across the state, you're just shy of $300,000 a unit.
Supervisor Vaughn, you had a question?
So I looked back at when this was originally approved for our ARPA funds, the 3.5 million that was from April of 22, and the cost then was quoted at being about 7 million. So I'm wondering if you can help me understand how we got from 7 million to 17 million in that short time? I mean, I understand inflation, but that seems like more than inflation.
Well, the ARPA funds were never 100% of the transaction. They were a portion of it. Well, the ARPA funds are 3.5. Right. And at that point in time, the total cost of the transaction was probably in the $14.5 million range. When you add the tax credits and the soft funds, the grants and other things.
Okay. I don't think you were at the meeting in that time when it was discussed, but we were told that the cost of the project was $7 million in April of '22.
Maybe we talked, was that maybe hard construction costs?
That could have been, it could have been a subset. If somebody had said how much is going into bricks and sticks, that may have been the number, but I don't think we were ever at 7 million for the whole enchilada. I'll go back and look at the numbers, but I think to the chairperson's comment, it could have been a portion of the total.
Supervisor Guselik, you had a question?
I think I answered my own question. Thank you.
Okay. Supervisor Turcott.
Is there a scope of work for each building then that we will be able to look at? And my second question would be government regulation. I'm sure you have to deal with lead, everything when they start tearing into these buildings, which drives the cost up. So
Lead, asbestos, energy efficiency upgrades. These buildings were built in the late 70s, or mid to late 70s, and that was before there were ADA rules. So, I mean, you've got 70 units which are largely not ADA friendly, and they're occupied by older adults and folks with disabilities. So there's a decent amount of money going into that. Windows, they're all electric baseboard heat. And as you know, that's the most expensive you could possibly have today. It's the most efficient. And at the time the buildings were built, it was the cheapest to install. And electric utilities at the time were saying, you know, it's the bargain of a century, so put it in. Well, turned out to not be the bargain of a century. So now it's either we put in enough solar to offset the increased cost, or take it out and put something else in, like geothermal, or a mix of geothermal and solar to avoid that energy cost. And the way the units are structured, most of the residents pay their own utility bill. So largely, for many of them, 100% of the cost of increased electric usage falls right on the occupants of the units.
So, Tom, based on our increased materials, increased labor, increase in interest rates, does the project cash flow? I imagine you must keep up to date on cash flow on this thing to make sure it's going to work.
Oh yeah, the $17 million number that's in WIDA right now cash flows. It works at that. One of the things that HUD did as part of that rent study was to go back and look at where the rents were at and how rents have moved for a period in time. So there's increased cash flow coming from HUD basically to pay for the mortgage on the property.
And have there been any preliminary appraisals as if they're completed? You know, if we do everything we're saying we're going to do, or is that too early for that?
I'm not sure I understand.
What I'm looking at, is there anybody projected, once we do everything that we're talking about doing, is there a value put on the 70 apartment units?
Well, the units are valued at an as-is appraisal at about 2.6 million right now.
Okay.
And with the increased cash flow and improvements, I'm sure that's going to go up at least $1 million or $2 million in the process. One of the things with these buildings is that they can't really be sold. So in a typical real estate environment, if you were all real estate developers and you owned these 70 units and they were private housing and they didn't have government financing, you'd be free to flip them, sell them, pull some equity out, refinance them. With all of the money that was put into the buildings when they were first built and all of the federal financing that has gone in subsequent to that, there are land use restriction agreements. So the Housing Authority can't really sell the properties. So when an appraiser looks at that, they'll say, well, yeah, it's a great unit, except it's not really something that's typical real estate.
It's got like a deed restriction because of the money,
Yes.
the government money that went on in there to begin with.
Significant deed restrictions. And, the process, if somebody's saying, well, could you ever get rid of the deed restrictions? Yes, you could. But typically, under the HUD process, there's anywhere from a 7 to 10 wind down, 7 to 10 year wind down to make sure that all of the residents, to the supervisor's question earlier, have another place to go. Because if the buildings were sold and the new owner wanted to increase the rent, that could easily force a lot of the 70-unit occupants to say, I can't afford that rent, I've got to find someplace else. And we all know that there aren't 70 available units right now in Barron County for them to move into, so.
Okay. Supervisor Patty Anderson, you had a question?
Yes. What's the average rent that you collect?
The average rent right now is about $450. And residents pay 30% of their income. So if all 70 residents were in this room right now and you ask them, what do you pay in rent? They probably would be 70 different answers, because it's a function, they pay 70% or 30% of their income in rent plus utilities. And then HUD pays the difference. So that changes as residents' incomes change.
Supervisor Taxtall, you had a question?
Yeah, there's such a thing as when you're moving these residents around, there's transfer trauma. Have you looked into minimizing that transfer trauma because of the mortality of some of this, what it causes?
Oh, that's an excellent question. The major support network for the residents currently living in the 70 units are their neighbors. So if all of a sudden their neighbor's not there because they're someplace else because their unit's being remodeled, that creates a problem. Going back to the question earlier about resident relocation, that's something that's done with a great deal of discussion with residents. The ideal scenario would be to have them move in with family or friends for a period in time, and frequently housing authorities will provide a stipend to the resident to do that. Their cost of moving and relocating, telephone and things like that is all paid for by the project, so the resident doesn't have to pack themselves up. That's all taken care of by part of that $17 million that's in the budget. But just renting a hotel room and moving them into it is not in the cards. So the speed with which and efficiency with which that relocation takes place really guides the relocation. So you can imagine putting the redevelopment out to bid to a local contractor who would say, well, okay, when do you want me to start and when do you want me to finish? And say, well, theoretically, it's this day and this day, assuming we can open up the unit for you to get in. So it's a double-edged sword. If there was a vacant 70-unit building and everyone could go there, but keep in mind they're in six different communities. So you'd be pulling people from a lot of places to a central area, and that too would be a challenge because many of the residents have family that live close by right now in Hogan or Turtle Lake or Dallas. So if all of a sudden their family members here in Barron, they'd have to come here. So that's also a challenge. Anybody who wants to help volunteer to work with the Housing Authority to work that out.
Supervisor Cook, you had another question.
I want to follow up on the chairman's question about the evaluation. You said somewhere around 2.5 million. After $17 million invested in this project, those assessments will go to 5 to 6 million. Am I understanding that correctly?
The current assessment, I'm going from memory right now, I think it's 2,386,000. That's the as-is.
Right.
In the shape you see them when you go into them today. When they get improved, the principal increase in value is going to be the cash flow, not the value of the improvements. The new building going up in Barron, which is new construction, multifamily, that building will probably be appraised at maybe 25% of the cost of the building. And that's because a lot of the federal financing that goes into it doesn't show up in value in the property. So applying standard appraisal and valuation methods to a income restricted property with a 30-year land use restriction agreement is they're like on two different planets, basically.
And then the last, are these units on tax roll? I mean, do we collect property taxes on these units?
The Housing Authority pays a pilot, a payment in lieu of tax.
Okay, Supervisor Patty Anderson.
What's the average stay of somebody renting? Are they, and do you have a lease? Do they have a lease?
Oh, they have a very detailed lease.
Okay.
And their lease remains, to the couple of questions about relocation, their lease does not get canceled. The Housing Authority is responsible for that resident. The same when they might not be in their current unit, but in a different unit in the building, in a different building, living with family or friends. They still have all the benefits of that lease, and so that lease is in place when the resident returns to the building. So they don't get, their ties to the Housing Authority are not severed when they're relocated temporarily for relocation.
And are they long-term people, like years, that they stay in the same unit?
Yes, they would have the option to come back to the unit.
And what's the average of, how many in the 70 units do you have that are like long-term?
About 90%.
Supervisor Turcott.
This is remodeling. Is there cost, so as costs start to escalate, that this gets revisited? I mean, you might start finding rot in a wall and I think the board is a little sensitive to cost overruns. So is there a way we can do that and
Well,
revisit things?
that's one of the reasons that I'm as interested in looking at some of that federal funding coming through the pipeline, because that may easily offset some issues. In these buildings, probably the biggest issue that you'd run into is mold. If it was advanced mold, you'd see it on the outside. So you'd see the black mold usually around the base, the cold molding. If it's not progressed to that level, it might be inside the walls, so taking off some drywall could expose that.
Don,
Which is the other reason.
Correct me if I'm wrong, though. I think you've done some preliminary evaluations
yes.
of all these
Yeah.
units already. They're going in cold on this stuff. They've looked at it, so.
And the Housing Authority has done a very good job of maintaining the property. So there is, there are some things like the elevator in Burger Woodland. That's the original elevator. And I wouldn't say that Meg has to use a paper clip to get it to move from one floor to the other, but it's the next best thing sometimes when it gets stuck. So there are some things like that are major mechanical items that when they get upgraded are going to be a significant cost and have a pretty significant impact on the rehab because the car needs to be made bigger to accommodate EMS uses right now. And that means you got to have a bigger hole in the building for the elevator, which means what gives, you know, and where's the support and other things for that. Windows, bathrooms, lots of the bathrooms are going to be adjusted so they're ADA accessible. It's really not acceptable to spend that kind of money on a rehab and have somebody turn their walker sideways to get into the bathroom. You'd like them to be able to just walk in.
Supervisor Buchanan, you had a question?
Yes, I think you indicated that the average resident would pay like 30% of their income, and that would be like $450 a month or something like that. How much is HUD willing to pay to make up the difference to make it cash flow?
The $450 is the max rent.
Oh, okay.
So a portion of that is the residents, 30%.
Anyway,
And-
how much is HUD willing to pay to make up the difference to make
Oh,
it cash flow?
HUD pays 100% because that rent study that we talked about, HUD is involved in setting the top level. So if they say the remodeled unit should rent for $550, let's say it's currently renting for $450, that rent increase won't be passed on to the resident. It'll be passed on to HUD.
But if the project is to cash flow, the rent has to be substantially more than $500 a month per unit. And so how much, well, you say HUD will pay up whatever the difference is to make it cash flow? How do you determine?
Well, you've just identified the biggest issue with regard to affordable housing in the country, and that is the rent should go up based on the value of the improvements or the cost of building new housing. But the rent doesn't go up because of HUD regulations. So what that means is you have to find other money, which is the reason that the low-income housing tax credits are used to make up the difference, and grant funds and other things. If we just make the math easy and set the rent at $400 a month for a current unit, that's the maximum rent that the housing authority can charge. Every one of the 70 residents, or really 6 of the units are duplexes, so they're kind of in a different world. So we take those 6 out of the 70. And we get 64 units that are pretty much all one bedroom. $400 a month. Resident pays 30% of their income. So if that's $100 a month, HUD pays $300. If a resident's rent is $50 a month, HUD pays $350. If a resident is at zero rent because of their very low income, HUD pays $400. HUD will never pay more than $400 until they agree to it, and the housing authority periodically asks them to review comparable rents in Barron County, at which time HUD may change that. That was that rent study that I had on my earlier slide. That's one of the things that we've done with HUD is to say, okay, let's look at the current rents to see if there's an opportunity to increase those, and let's look at the new rents in the as rehabbed scenario, and what will those rents be? And HUD's identified that as well.
Supervisor Patty Anderson.
Are they allowed to have pets?
Yes.
Okay.
Supervisor Banks.
So we're rehabbing 70 units. Is there a need to build new units and due to the aging population? Is that a possibility, or are some other associations or agencies doing that? Or what's the projected number that should be in Barron County?
Well, I don't know that number offhand, but if Barron County is pretty much like every other county in the US, there's a bigger need than you have availability for, so there's a shortage. So I think the short answer is yes, there would be opportunity for new housing.
They're building one in the city of Barron right now along.
Right.
Yeah. So there's
That's
a big need.
That's a family property. And unfortunately, right now, the way that WIDA has the allocation, their tax credits go to each state based on population. And they're very oversubscribed. So there's a lot more developers and communities and housing authorities wanting tax credits than there are available. That's the same in all 50 states. So there's a selection criteria, and Congress requires that that's done on a point scoring situation. So if you wanted to go do tax credit housing in Colorado from your computer right there, you could dial into the Colorado equivalent of WIDA, and you'd see how they allocate their tax credits, and you'd see what the point scoring is. I teach classes at the UW School of Business, and that's the equivalent of me giving the students the final exam on day one and the answers to the final exam. So there's no hocus pocus. You know exactly what you're up to with a developer when you go to Montana or Florida or Texas or Wisconsin. Each state can set that priority differently. And in Wisconsin, the priority is set for urban and families. Rural senior is low on the list. And that's the way that cookie crumbles. So we're navigating around it and figuring out ways to get it done, and get the work the work in place. There are different types of tax credits that we'd administer and different rules associated with those. So that's part of figuring
Tom,
out.
thanks for, don't go too far in the weeds here. You'll lose everybody. Seeing no further questions though, Tom, thanks for your presentation. You did an excellent job, and we look forward to keeping in contact with you.
You bet. And for those of you that have detailed questions, you can get my contact information from Jeff, or I'll be more than happy to come up and sit down with you when you have some time and walk you through it.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 8, progress update on the highway facilities. I guess that's going to be me, and it's going real well. So when I go there, Max says everything's taken care of. They're talking to everybody. Basically, we aren't having our finance meetings at the current time because between Jody and Mac and our highway commissioner, Mike Haves, they're taking it upon themselves to get all this stuff handled and taken care of. And I was just at a highway meeting, I don't know, a week or so ago, and I asked them, how's it going? They said, great. So apparently everything is no news is good news. So item number 9, now the financial update on that. Again, with the last meeting we had was several weeks ago, but Jody has updated on November 30th. She did an update on where we're at, and right now her last thing showed we were 98,000 to the good. So I mean, I haven't said that in forever. So I hope that will continue, and that everything we have budgeted will suffice and take care of all of our issues out there. We are planning an open house for next summer, so good to see everything. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll go on to item number 10, the resolution setting forth the agreement between the Barron County and Wisconsin Professional Police Association for 2024 and 25. I think in your packet they had, Jeff provided all the changes. I was on this negotiating committee. I was not there the last couple times, which were 3-year contracts. This year they requested a 2-year. but the people that negotiated for the police association were very polite, very civil. They came with their requests. We went back and forth. They were given a couple options. One was to keep their health insurance for their police association exactly like our employees in Barron County, and with a different change on the wage schedule versus keeping they basically pay the same thing as our Barron County employees, except they don't get some of the benefits of, what do you call the health joy and that kind of thing. So we left it up to the association to decide. They opted for a little higher increase in the wages instead of benefits, which, I mean, people that are on different school boards and I realize what happens, the demographics of the participants. Some of them like benefits, some of them like cash. But it was very cordial, and I think it was a good contract. And I guess, does anybody? Well, I guess we've got a motion by Supervisor Buchanan and a second by Supervisor Olson to approve that resolution. Is there any questions? Not, let's vote. (26 yes and 3 absent), so that resolution passed. Thank you. Now, number 11, 11 and 13 both require a 2/3 vote, which is 20 members. So 11 is a resolution authorizing designated general fund balance for the future payroll costs. And as Jeff had in our outline, I believe it was a little over $400,000 of future payroll costs. And we had a motion by Supervisor Hanson and a second by Supervisor Olson. And he's proposing to take that out of ARPA funds as well as the sale of the Ann Street School. Anybody have any questions on that? Seeing none, all those in favor of that resolution? Well, nope, let's vote. Sorry. Old habits are coming back. (26 yes and 3 absent), so that resolution carries. Thank you. Item number 12, resolution authorizing the sale of the Ann Street School located at 33 Ann Street in Rice Lake, Wisconsin to Kimberly Randall. This was requested by the realtor, and he specifically wanted us to have this resolution, and that's why it's here. Motion by Supervisor Cook, second by Supervisor Banks. Any questions on that? Looks like it's right now proposing to close here at the end of January. So, not, let's vote. (26 yes, 3 absent), so that resolution is carried. Item number 13, resolution authorizing $10,000 of unassigned fund balance for improvements to the UW ECBC for UW Extension staff, and that is a $10,000 not to exceed. Motion by Supervisor Hanson, second by Supervisor Anderson. There may be a question that right now they're figuring it's $12,000 to do this. If it is, we'll be kicking in 6. So, any questions? Not? Let's vote. (26 yes and 3 absent). Thank you. That motion's carried. For item number 14, resolution, motorized trail authorizations for years 2024 and 25. Motion by Supervisor Gore, second by Supervisor Thompson. Is there any questions on that? This is something we do every year. Not, let's vote. (26 yes, 3 absent), so that resolution motion carries. Item number 15, consolidated fixed asset purchases. Is that you, Jeff?
Yep. We just like that. It was approved by the executive committee. I would like it approved by the county board. As you know, it's been taking long, extended times to get fixed assets, and this would be just incorporated as part of the budget process beginning next August.
A motion by Supervisor Turcott, seconded by Supervisor Langman, and a question by Supervisor Guselak.
So I see in your memo that was put together, it's September is kind of the start date of where they would be able to make this request?
Correct. What I would do is as I said in my update, we would put a resolution together setting forth the departments that are asking to get permission to start not spend money, but to put the purchase orders, sign the purchase orders to get these in the queue, to get them delivered before the end of the next fiscal period or the budget's approved.
So what happens if it needs to be before September?
Then it's going to have to come a line item, because I don't want this happening outside the budget like we're doing it now. We're doing it piecemeal. I want to have one process, and we've talked about department heads. If it's before that, well, it's going to have to be one at a time.
Like we're doing now.
All right, thank you.
Seeing no further questions, let's vote on that motion. Okay, that process for consolidating the asset purchases are 26 yes and 3 absent, so that motion carries. Thank you. Item number 16, debt issuance for the Sheriff's Department, Sallyport, and fixed assets.
First and foremost, thank you, board members, for approving setting aside some money for future payroll costs. What Lance is going to put up here is, and what I want to talk about, these are future things, no need to, it's just get you to think. All right, we're going to be spending probably some major dollars on
And
health-
Jeff, you aren't asking for a resolution,
No,
really, so.
no. This is just information to get you prepared. I'm going to start at the top. Thank you for passing the resolution on the 400,000. Very appreciative of that. The 1,049,11. That's what Jody gave me as final ARPA dollars that could be used for Health and Human Services software purchase upgrade. We have been running on a homegrown system since 1996. I believe it's an accurate statement. We're the only county there's 2 counties on a homegrown system out of 72. This is not what we're going to write a check for. Lance is doing an RFP, which is part of my update. We're going to look at what it's going to take to go out and buy off-the-shelf software. It's not going to be $125. You're not going to go down to Best Buy and pick up a CD and throw it in a computer and do it. Just be aware. Very good questions from you. We've got money reserved for ARPA money for the HVAC. What we would do is either cancel that or go to a financing resolution. Number 1, under 2024 possible borrowings, the 500,000 to 700,000, that can be struck. I talked to Brent on Friday. He is not comfortable moving forward with the dry building at this time. Probably do it in 25. Why are we doing this? I know we only have 5 members, we have 9-member solid waste board. He is getting palletized on pallets, wrapped from other states. He's getting waste that he burns at out-of-county prices from big corporations, Fortune 500 companies that'll come as far as Central Ohio and have us burn it. What he's looking at doing is having a dry building so that during those months of December to May, when it's slow, that building is full of dry material that he can put in and keep our in-county rates down. I think it's really smart. Brent has looked at this. The bottom line is this. If we don't do it, somebody else is going to. And it keeps our name out there and contractors coming. That's that. We all know about the HVAC at the campus. I put that in here. We've got ARPA money to do this, but we could certainly borrow to do it. 1.5 to 1.75 million. These are ranges. The Sallyport at the Justice Center, I believe the first draft of that's been put forward. That's 1.5 to 2.5, a range. Communications upgrade was asked to be added by Chris in the last couple of weeks. Our communications, as I understand, it's 15 years old. That's how I remember that. Yep, okay, good. Thank you. So, you know what, folks? I've talked to several people over the weekend and some of you board members. You know what? Guarantee you, 15 years from now, You're gonna be sitting in this room going, we need another communications upgrade. That's probably the life cycle of what we need. Also, I've been talked to by quite a number of the fire departments, and they're gonna be a part of this as well, which will give us interconnectivity. So I can't believe I'm saying this because I'm pinch pennies, but I can't see the upside of us going out and making an assessment for all of these fire departments. They're not gonna raise the money and they're not gonna have the money. So it's basically, we should probably do this and bite the bullet. So talk to Josh Lowe on Friday. Let's say that a round number, this is 6 million. Just don't say that that's the number. Let's say it could be the number. We could probably borrow at 4%, which is less than the state trust fund, open market. Could borrow, we would certainly do open market. We would also look at having a 10-year prepayment clause. What that means is in year 10, you could buy down year 20. In year 11, you can buy down year 19, like that. That's what I'm talking about. Or establish a sinking fund for that same purpose. That's potential borrowings that we could look at. The acid gas removal system was borrowed at 5.25%. We could probably, and I verified this on Friday with Josh, we could probably refinance that for 18 years at 4.75%. I want to put out a very salient point. The difference between this borrowing and the acid gas removal system is the acid gas removal system would be a taxable borrowing. What I'm asking you to consider in all of this is cost avoidance. Yes, it's two different issues, but going to the open market for both of these at the same time potentially will save you money. You're going to have one set of legal documents for the non-taxable, one set for the taxable. You go to the open market, it's a reverse auction. People can choose which one they want to get into. Now I'm going to jump ahead. The question's going to be, why don't you go to a local bank? My response is, they're big people. They want to get a bidder for them. They can go out and bid like anybody else. We don't need to do their work for them. Okay, so it's going to be two different notes issued at one time with two different legal opinions, but then you're not paying market price. That's what I'm talking. You don't have to do any of this. Okay, so that's some things in the future. At the bottom of this is some things as we look at the 2025-2026 budget. And yes, there's no toenail Tuesday with me. We're always looking forward. You look at the fact that our general tax levy picks up the bridge aid. We don't have to do that. By state statute, that is outside the levy limit. The municipalities should be coming forth to us with a plan. That should be outside the levy limit. Any money unspent stays in that line item and is pushed forward. High cost placements, we're just going to leave that alone. But that's something that this board, I'm going to continue to just not harp on, but think about. We pay 100% of a high cost placement. One of the things that other counties have looked at is forcing this outside the levy limit. And one of the ways to do that is short-term borrowing. Item number 3, with the signing of the brewers to keep them here, we're looking at getting more sales tax revenue. The Department of Administration takes 1.75% as an administrative charge for the sales tax collected by the counties that have sales tax. Under this, I believe it was reduced to either 1.25% or 3/4. But the bottom line is every county that has a sales tax will now be getting more of our money. They've been keeping, I think was in the Wisconsin County Association, it's millions the Department of Administration has kept since 1986. They've set on. Lastly, if possible, if the changes to the ROD fees where we're going to get more of the money that we record, that's probably not going to happen until 27, but it's items here to be thinking about when we start working on the 2025-26 budget. Talked a lot. Questions, concerns, comments? Snide remarks.
Question by Supervisor McRoberts.
Jerry.
Should put your mic on, Jerry.
You need 2 more screens, Lance? We can get you 2 48 inchers. We can do that. Yep, right up there. Other questions?
Supervisor Taxtell.
Gary?
Yeah, what does Toenail Tuesday mean?
I want to look past us, we just passed our budget, but I want to keep us looking forward of where we're going to be, because there's some big dollar items here. Well, you look at here, there could be 350, 400,000 just in operational changes between 2024 and 2026. We need to, give this consideration, how we're going to do that. And talking to Mike, our new highway commissioner, he was coming from Burnett County. He was like, you pay your bridge aid out of your general levy? Why isn't that outside the levy where it's supposed to be? Something to think about. Other questions? Again, the plan would be for Ellers to make a presentation to the executive committee in December and then,
Actually,
January
Wednesday, January 3rd.
and then see where it goes. I don't have any other agenda items for the county board other than this one if you wanted to have a county board meeting on the 15th. But this is a long process. State Statute 67 is very clear. This is a 3 or 4 month deal between if you decide to do this before you'd even go out and do any issuance. So you gotta think ahead here a little bit how you want to do this. Other questions? Thank you, Louis. That's all I have.
Okay, item number 17, ARPA expenditures. In the packet, Jody had one dated December 1st. Obviously, the Ann Street School upgrade, after our motion today, that's going for the future payroll costs. So other than that, it's pretty much still the same. Okay, item number 18, report from the county administrator. Item number A, Jody usually handles, but she's not going to be here. If anybody has any questions on it.
Direct them to me and I'll direct them to Jody.
Right.
All right, item 18B is the annual treasurer's report of receipts and disbursements. If you have a question, let me know. Talked about the policy exception for delivering Meals on Wheels, and I appreciate the executive committee doing that. That's less than $1,000 a year. We talked about the e-Infosys replacement. The memorial policy from the property committee was passed. Municipal joint review boards, it's typically Louis or I attending in the absence of us getting them here early enough where we can actually appoint somebody. Our health insurance is at 103% after 10 months, but that's okay. We have run-out costs that we'll recoup after that. Tourist rooming houses, excuse me, are a big deal. They are a huge sales tax generator across our state. I think that's really good. I put some information on from Ford Analytics on how level the county levy has been for a number of years. And then I carried over some money to 2024 for employee recognition. So any questions on my updates? Just trying to be brief here.
Seeing none, Jeff, let's go on to 19, the appointments.
Yep, we can't take these all together, so let's reappoint Kathy for a 3-year term to the IFLS board, please.
Can I get a motion for that?
All right, you want to do them all at one time? Yep. Well, this is what's going to happen, folks. I have Supervisor Patty Anderson, Supervisor Carolyn Bartlett, Supervisor Pete Olson, Supervisor Audrey Kuslik, Supervisor Craig Turcott, and Supervisor Randall Cook. We're all interested in serving on our CJCC as basically
19B is what
19B for here. So I'm going to fold them one at a time and put them in my hat and have the clerk draw a name and go from there, because that's, I think, was the fairest way to do it. Our next meeting is in January. I put it in my update. Hope who's ever selected will come. So with that, Jess, are you ready? All right. So here, I'm going to mix them up. There you go. Craig Turcott, you're a drawn name. Are you willing to serve? Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we're going to take all these appointments at one time, given the situation we have with our software. There's a motion by Supervisor Olson, seconded by Supervisor Gores. Yeah, I know. I'll get to Pete's question in a minute. But just to reiterate, on the IFLS board, we'd have Kathy Krug for a 3-year term. We'd have Craig Turcott for the Criminal Justice Collaborating Council. And the municipal library appointments are Chautauqua Supervisor Banks, Cumberland Supervisor Turcott, Cameron Supervisor Krug, Turtle Lake Supervisor Taxtell, Barron Supervisor Nelson, and Rice Lake Supervisor Hanson. Supervisor Olson had a question.
Well, it's dealing with item C. I'm curious why we were appointing 2 to a lot of these boards, now it's just 1, and then what changed that we're appointing them when they were all taken off at one point?
We had to take them all off because it was noted that we only get 1 county board supervisor, not 2. I missed that in the state statute. So I'm just asking for confirmation of these because we could put 2 or 3, but state statute prevents us from having more than 1.
Okay, seeing no further questions, let's vote. Vote Supervisor Hanson. We'll have to do something at that point in time.
Yep, we'll have to do something in April, and actually the gentleman has already signed papers from Gary's. He's very interested in serving on the board, so it looks like it's going to be a great fit.
Any additional questions? Seeing none, let's vote. (24 yes and 5 absent. Supervisor Efforts and Supervisor Cook had to leave there on the Barron County Board. So, so that all those appointments as outlined passed. Item number 20, claims, petitions, and correspondence. We have none. Suggestions for future agenda items. Just got CJCC update but that's something that can be done anytime.
The CJCC update can't be done till February because Judge Babler and DA Wright both wanted to be here. On this Ellers thing, there's no rush on that unless something would change now. As far as I know, John and Jess, we don't have to appoint the fire wardens in January, do we? Or do we have to appoint them in January? No, okay.
Okay, so right now, we aren't going to have a January 15th full board, but, I guess stay tuned.
Yeah, please stay tuned. We'll
might
send
have to.
something out.
As soon as Jeff knows that we're going to have one, he'll let everybody know. Okay, is there anything else? Not by unanimous consent, we'll adjourn at 10:06. Thanks, everybody.